Solo trilogy of books.
That's
Did you
Legends,
guys
right?
read those? Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
I don't know. Came out in like '97. Not
Yeah.
great so far. Really
No.
not hooking me. I'm about 40 pages in and I'm very bored,
These
which
are
I
prequel
don't
books,
like to
right?
feel.
I
Yeah.
feel like 97 was probably the worst of times and the best of times for Star Wars merch because that was right when Phantom Menace was coming out. So they just like cranked it to 11. That's when the Jar Jar Binks make out tongue lollipop came out. So they're just like, whatever we can make, call it Star Wars, put it out there. And so they probably just got some person that wrote like a time traveling treehouse book for Scholastic, like,
Well,
Han
no,
Solo, go.
get this bullshit. Her first two books that got her the Han Solo job were Star Trek books. So she's writing Star
Boo.
Trek novelizations.
She probably just swapped out names of like
Yeah.
a Star Trek book to a Star Wars
It's
book.
like the worst thing you
Hey,
could
you
do.
write Star books.
Yeah.
And then she did one for Alien Resurrection later. It's like she had a very specific niche. And Crispin.
She's like, this was actually originally supposed to be a Star Wars book about Han Solo being raped, but now luckily this works out for Alien.
And I want to say, like, it might be the opposite of what you're saying too, Patrick. Is they just had all of this IP that they had to get out before they don't talk about Han Solo anymore. Because when '99 hit, it was just all prequel content all the time, and it was Darth Plagueis prequel, Darth Sidious prequel. And like they're like, all right, you got this crappy Han series, we'll get it out in '97. That's
I
fine.
can totally see some schlocky attempt of them being like, this is a Darth Plagueis prequel, but wait, don't you want to know how he became wise? Because he's actually really stupid in this one, and we're gonna work up to it. He's doing times tables in this one.
I'm just thinking of like a Van Wilder type of story of like, let's see how he skated by college.
He was cool and edgy. He went by Darth P at this point.
Yeah. Big P, are you with me? Yeah, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Well, I shit you not, the most recent thing she's written after all those sci-fi tie-in books is in 2011, Pirates of the Caribbean, The Price of Freedom.
Nice. So she probably took a
boy.
Han Solo book and then swapped him in for Captain Jack. It was just another scoundrel.
And
Here we go.
yes, because this is 25-year-old Jack Sparrow is a clean-cut merchant seaman pursuing a legitimate
What?
career as first mate for the East India Trading Company.
Yeah, Spice Runner. I mean, come on. It's pretty similar.
God, I'm gonna read them all.
It was a
Yeah.
great year. 97
So
was a great year.
piggyback on what you were saying earlier, Patrick, too, like I don't care how crappy the bar is. I just want to be at one and have somebody hand me like a Miller High Life. Like, yeah, I can go buy Miller High Life and I can have my wife hand it to me, but it's not the same. you know?
Yeah. I mean, like, that's the thing is it's so much, like, especially living in the city, so many of the restaurants that we like are still open doing the curbside pickup and stuff. And, like, food's great, whatever. It's great that I can still get access to that food and support those restaurants. But I really want, especially now that it's getting warmer here in Chicago, I'm really looking forward to that ability to go sit down at a crappy, like, wobbly iron table, thing with an uncomfortable iron chair, and then have them put down this big, overpriced, $11 draft beer in front of me. And just sit there as a tear rolls down my eye. That's what I've been dreaming about.
Have you guys caught wind of any speakeasies, some near-to-wells, some it's got to be happening somewhere.
I have heard about some
Well-
crazy parties happening in Chicago.
Ooh. There's a brewery being built across the street from me, which would be super cool for this summer if I knew I was going to be able to go, but it looks awesome.
It's actually a
It's-
hand sanitizer factory that on the side they make beer.
Might be, yeah. But it's
you
I mean
notice-
it's literally 18 meters from my apartment.
Nice.
Have you noticed any restaurants or anything near you selling things they shouldn't, or not necessarily they shouldn't, but selling things that they normally don't? For example, what the donut shop in town is selling like hand sanitizer and toilet paper. It's like maybe I don't want to get that here.
I heard about, like, I think the first or second week of all this stuff, going down. Some restaurant was throwing in a roll of toilet paper with your order as a way to entice you.
I think wasn't that Paradise Park?
It might have been. I'm sure there's
a lot of places where
restaurants probably do.
I know
yeah.
some restaurants that should do that all the time.
Looking at you, Thai restaurants.
Indian food. Alex, I assume you've been watching The Last Dance. That seems right up your alley.
Yes.
Yes.
The Julia
Watch.
Stiles film, correct?
Yeah, the Julia Stiles film. You look at the style of the suits they wore and just go, man, we need to go back. Like basically
Suits.
taking material the size of a tarp and making it into a jacket and pants.
They had like
Just
super high
swimming in it.
lapels too. Like they
Yeah.
barely had an opening for their neck.
And they were like already really tall guys
Yeah.
and like broad-shouldered guys, but they had
Yeah.
shoulders that I like swear were probably 5 feet wide. I'm like, man, we need to go back to that. Like,
Just like-
tired of this tight weights, tight fitting pants. Like we need to go back to giant suits that could like basically make shelter for an entire family.
We've got to dress like Dick Tracy villains all the time.
Yep. And big, long, pointy shoes.
To
I
be
think
honest,
this is
I've been more.
my favorite part of the show is just watching their suits when they get off.
Guys,
Well,
theme
I've enjoyed
restaurant
the
idea.
hats.
Oh, the hats.
The
What, Patrick?
hats have been even better.
Theme restaurant idea?
Yeah, just the enforced dress code is like mid-90s NBA players. Is that what Michael Jordan's Steakhouse is? You have to walk in work like that to be seated.
Yeah. You go,
And
it's okay if you just have a blanket, just make the blanket have a lapel.
Yeah, and women have to wear them too.
Yeah.
So everyone would actually end up looking like David Byrne from Talking Heads.
Stop making sense.
Yeah, that'll be the name of the restaurant. Yeah.
Yeah. Michael Jordan, stop making sense.
This is a great idea. Big
Well, that'd be
fan.
fun because it would make sense.
It would make perfect sense. Everyone would completely understand the theme and be like, Patrick, this is so intuitive.
Wow.
And why do you run a restaurant? You have no culinary expertise. They'd be like, shut up and put your suit on.
I think you need to join the Let Us Entertain You group.
Yeah, I've got a great
Let
pitch
us
for it.
spelled LETTUCE.
Listen,
How
guys,
else
I
would you spell
know
it?
in our current economy, the restaurant and hospitality industry is doing really well. So how about we open up another restaurant with a very, very bold theme? That's what that's what America needs right now.
Well, just like the brewery going across the Alex's Street, you know, hope and a prayer. It's like, yeah, we might open something.
Like a field of dreams sort of situation.
If you build it, they will be worried about coming for a good another 6 months.
Yeah.
So, Star Wars, though.
Were there, on the note of The Last Dance in Star Wars, are there any times when Han's been walking to the Millennium Falcon carrying a Miller Lite and then speeds off?
Oh,
it
like
down?
Rodman?
Because that was my favorite Dennis Rodman thing, just walking up to his bike with a Miller Lite, cameras all around, drops the Miller Lite and speeds off on the motorcycle.
That was so good. And I love that, like, dates Madonna once and then all of a sudden dresses funny and colors his hair.
And moves straight on to Carmen Electra.
Yeah, like, Madonna's like, dude, you just got to be yourself. And he's like, all right, cool.
He agreed way too hard to that.
Chris, we want you to be yourself.
I agreed way too hard to that way too long ago.
And then he comes back with cheetah hair and a lip ring that obviously is gnawing away at his bottom gums, like in a bad sense.
Yeah,
Why
I get
all this,
uncomfortable when I have a booger stuck in my nose for a couple minutes. I can't imagine having all those nose rings.
Yeah.
That's what I truly
And going
want.
up for rebounds too.
I get I'm really uncomfortable about just being called the worm. So
Yeah.
I don't know how. Like I don't even do it voluntarily. He does it voluntarily, so it's
The
pretty
worm
wild.
was a beast on the boards. I heard someone say that once.
Yeah.
Yeah, but Star Wars.
Ah,
of
second
worms.
attempt at the segue.
Sarlacc, am I right?
Yeah. So let's do introductions. Hi there, guys. You're listening to Star Wars Loose Cannon. I'm Nick Oswald. Let's go to my right, the guy with the dark room.
Oh, hey, how's it going? I'm Patrick.
I can't tell if you're right of me right now.
It's not pointing to me on my screen, but the
Okay.
dark room
You're
kind of gave it away
definitely-
for me.
He
Yeah.
is left of you.
Dressed like a Sith Lord and kind of having a room to fit it. How's everyone doing? And with
Well,
me is
Annalise says we can continue. We can go back to 90s NBA. So yes.
We have permission.
and with me with a buzzed head is
Alex Lowe. That's me. Yeah, you know, as we like to say, all the germs live in the hair, and I need to be pure.
This is working out really great.
this is
And,
great
this is
great podcast material. Visual cues.
And to my left, with the fancy camo pants, is producer Chris.
Hey,
Those
all
were
you
some cool
fancy
camo
kids.
pants.
Thank you.
Could you stand up and do a spin for the fans at home?
Give us a twirl.
Hey, Twitch watchers, add this for a highlight right now. There you go.
That wasn't what I meant when I said give us
I
a
got
spin,
headphones
but I like
on.
it.
What do you expect?
Give some
He
thrust.
can't
I
actually
expect
twirl.
to
That's
see a
true.
little of your butt, just a bit. So, yeah, Chris, we're back for another week, and this week's topic was your idea. So, do you want to tell us what we're talking about?
Yeah, I wanted to talk about this little character named Ahsoka Tano in the Star Wars universe. Some of you may have heard of her. And I know that we're coming at it from a different place, probably all four of us. I myself, I'm a big Clone Wars fan, pretty big Rebels fan, and the rest of you guys, like, what do you think of when you think Ahsoka Tano?
I've always thought of her as like one of those characters that almost represents a pocket of the fandom that I've never really jumped into. Kind of like in a way how like Kyle Katarn was always like the '90s like extra lore stuff that I never got too into. Ahsoka's all the CG Clone Wars type cartoons that I've never really given a fair shake. So a lot of potential there for me that I just haven't really dove into.
Yeah, same here. It's obviously it's one of those things where Clone Wars came at the wrong time, and we talk about the dark times of Star Wars and the pre-1999 viewership. Once we got to the Clone Wars animated film and then the series that came after that, I think it was just timed wrong for me to want an animated Star Wars. And so time passes, seasons come and go, and all of a sudden you have all of this content. And these seasons are long. Like, well, season 1 is what, 24 episodes or more. And you just get behind, and then you never think that you're going to get it. It's like, hey, if Alex just caved and stopped being a contrarian and decided to watch Game of Thrones, like you got some content ahead of you. And that's the same thing. And maybe this is a good idea, Chris. Maybe we do a like Clone Wars catch up where we like have an episode where I explain seasons of Clone Wars to you and you go, yep, or nope,
That would be really
or something
fun.
like that.
Well, part of
But
this
yeah,
maybe
it's a fandom that I never tapped into that I really want to, because everyone who's super into Clone Wars like seems to glob on to Ahsoka way more than people even glob on to say Rey. Like people think that it's a much richer content, it's a much richer character that has more to say.
And part of what's difficult with the Clone Wars too is like there's suggested viewing sequences. Like some people say don't watch episode 1, then 2, then 3. Like some people like, okay, you want to start with halfway through the second season, and then you want to go back to the end of the first season, and it's, I don't know, a little aside.
Chris has a thing that you sent me, right?
It's intimidating.
Dig that out.
It's great. So it just shows the main story arcs from each season. And it also does honorable mentions, which in my opinion, all of the honorable mentions are essential. They're just great content. But the way the Clone Wars works is it's a kids show. Let's be honest. It's a good kids show, and I like it.
Hey,
But,
these movies are for kids too. You got to keep reminding yourself.
yeah.
How dare you?
But it basically shows
35-year-olds, never mind.
It'll have a couple random episodes, but then it'll have 3, 4, maybe even 5 episodes of a continued storyline that kind of start and finish. And there's multiple of them. So that's how I suggested Nick go about it. I don't want to go through the episode where it's just R2-D2 and C-3PO shenanigans that don't really tie into anything.
Right.
That's a big part, I think, of this series. There's a lot of one-offs of what does clone number 843 get into this episode, So
Yeah. Before we, turn this into a whole Clone Wars episode, I mean, there's a little bit of a danger of that. But Al, you didn't answer, but do you have any opinion on Ahsoka?
So you know how the last few episodes we've done, they've been topics I really know a lot about and have a strong knowledge of, and it's been a nice change of pace. Yeah.
welcome back.
So my thoughts on this Ahsoka Tano is it was really cool to see that name for the first time when you brought it up, Chris.
So you never even heard of her?
Wait, did you say Ashoka?
Yeah, he did that on purpose.
I have to bleach my ears out.
So
now,
I
thanks.
am completely unfamiliar with the Clone Wars other than the great prequel movie. But beyond that, I'm completely unfamiliar when it comes to the series and everything that's going on in that corner of the lore. Haven't visited her in any of the EU novels I've read, so all the research I was doing on this, fresh to my eyes and ears.
Cool. Well, that's totally fine. But kind of what I had in mind for this, I was just gonna give.
Thanks for your permission.
I mean, I'll tell you, like when I first like saw Clone Wars and I was like, oh, a Star Wars TV show. I just saw the animation style and I wrote it off completely from the start. I was like, I will not watch this. This just looked like kid garbage. And it took maybe like, almost a decade before I was willing to give it a shot. And then I was all in. But the way I set up my kind of introduction to this character is just to like give a little bit of overview, a little bit of background, and then the main reasons why I think she's kind of a big deal or kind of important to Star Wars. So just to give you guys a little background, she's, her name's Ahsoka Tano. She's got a nickname, Ashla, which is, that's like her other name. Some people call her that. It also has some other meanings, but she's a Togruta female. She grew up on the planet Silly. I don't know how to pronounce it. And she was actually found by...
That's silly.
Silly. It's like Sihle. So, and she was actually found by one of, I think, our favorite boys, Plo Koon. So she was... Yeah.
Love our tentacle boy.
Yeah. So,
Star Wars Bane.
Our breather boy. Yeah. Our mask boy. So he found her, picked her
You
up.
merely adopted Ahsoka.
She kind of did.
Yeah, he's got tentacles and pincers and a rebreather, which is just the holy trinity of a great character.
Yeah.
And a muffled voice, which sounds really cool.
If only he was a furry snake.
No, it's very true.
Shout out Oppo Rensisis.
Well, that would just be fan service at that point. So
go on, I won't interrupt you anymore.
Yeah, so I mean, at the ripe age of 3, she gets brought up. I mean, that's not anything unusual when it comes to Padawans and being recruited. So they brought her to the Jedi Temple, and when she got a little bit older, it was Yoda's idea to actually make her the apprentice of Anakin. So when the Star Wars Clone Wars TV show was being created, George Lucas was like, we really want Anakin and we want Obi-Wan to be the main focus of the show, but I want to add a youngling, and I want that youngling to be the apprentice of Anakin. So it was actually Ahsoka Tano was actually George's idea, and then Dave Filoni, he actually drew her, animated her, and brought her to life as a character. So it was a kind of a combination of the two of them that created Ahsoka. So she is, it's kind of like Yoda must have been thinking, what was he thinking? Why did he decide to give Anakin a Padawan? And I think it goes back to, when Anakin was younger, he kind of fell in love with his babysitter. I'm not sure if you guys remember that, Padme.
Well, he thought she was an
mentioned it a couple of
angel.
times.
So, I mean,
And
We've
so
all been there.
I mistook my babysitter for an angel many times, and I got tested by a psychologist for it. So,
okay.
anyways,
Still
that's
recovering.
not me.
Yeah, so I think they're like, well, that turned out really well. I mean, they're doing great. So why don't we give Anakin the duty of now being a babysitter for Ahsoka? So I thought they might have thought of the role reversal there would be, beneficial. So, and I think that what the main idea is like, he's like, look, Anakin really fears losing someone. He fears loss. So I need to give him a person that can give him a semblance of a relationship and kind of, and this is a little bit lower stakes. It's a younger person, but I think he was like, let's give him a chance to be a mentor. Let's make it so that he can, deal with these situations. I actually think it's a good idea. I think it was obviously we see how that worked out in the end, but I think it was a good idea. I think the intent was actually kind of smart. What do you guys think?
I mean, I'm trying to think about it in like a real world example where if you're at like a school and they're like, listen, Mr. Adams is about to have a mental breakdown. Can you give him one of those kids over there to calm him down? Send them over. Put the weight of the situation on that child's shoulders to take care of the weirdo that seems like they're going to go postal.
You're a general in the Republic. You're not doing too great, but we'll give you this kid to look after.
To be fair, it does kind of have like the vibe of like a Disney Channel original movie. Like, do you guys remember that movie First Kid with Sinbad?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
That's kind of the vibe I'm getting from it. So I'm gonna hot take. Star Wars plagiarized First Kid starring Sinbad. So
Damn.
call your lawyers. Yeah,
I feel it.
those are my thoughts.
But, as a character, she was, throughout the show, she's kind of known for her tenacity. She's a little aggressive. She can be a little reckless. And I think you kind of get an idea of who she learned that from. Anakin is her master, and he's, doesn't always set the best example, but I think he does. I think some of his worst tendencies are actually kind of curbed by Ahsoka because he knows he has to kind of play the mentor. So, that's kind of important. And actually, I think it's the first time we ever see a girl hold a lightsaber.
Maybe someone on the Jedi Council. Well, no, because you don't see them actually holding it.
But not you see an adult woman, but not a girl.
Yeah, not a girl. True.
Maybe
Not yet a woman. Yeah.
So, I guess
quote
maybe if the Revenge of the Sith came out
How dare
before
you.
the show, so I guess you probably saw some children with their lightsabers maybe in the training room, but anyways.
I'll just spend a bunch of time Googling little girls with lightsabers and see how that goes.
Let's see.
That's all of his research for this episode.
So that's a little bit of background on the character, but what I wanted to get into is why I think she's important, and because why do you need to care about Ahsoka? Like that's kind of the thing is if you're mostly contained to the movies, different books, you don't care about the animated TV shows. Like I don't get it. Like what is the big deal about Ahsoka? So I can't really speak for everyone, but I will talk about me personally, what I thought made her stick out. And
I will say, Chris, you were just speaking for me. So sell me. Why should I care?
Okay. So when you're watching the Clone Wars show, she's basically you. She's you. That's who she is. You. Yeah.
You're a little girl, Alex.
Yeah, you're a little girl.
You're a little girl that needs to fix a grown man.
Finally, someone understands.
So she's kind of the character. She gets brought into this crazy world. She's actually she's really relatable. She makes mistakes throughout the show. You can see that she's vulnerable. She's trying to learn. She's trying to get a handle about things, but she doesn't always do it right. She actually gets scolded multiple times by the Jedi Council. Anakin's kind of there. He tries to step in. He's like, hey, I know she didn't follow orders. She was supposed to retreat, but she didn't. It's on me. I taught her to be reckless. I taught her to be too aggressive. And they're like, nope, you're going to get guard duty at the temple for that. And she's like, oh, for how long? And then Mace Windu is like, well, it just got doubled because of that question. So it's like, if you're a child, which is a lot of the people that are watching this show, I think that's pretty relatable. You're kind of looking at the authoritative forces in your life and you're like, God, they suck. And to Ahsoka, you're looking at the Jedi Council like that.
I wish she would have taken the route and ripped off the Breakfast Club. It was like, fine, I don't care.
Eat my
Fine,
shorts.
do it.
Yeah.
Eat my shorts.
Yeah, literally, she's
I got you for the rest of your natural born life, Bender.
So yeah, she's like thinking in terms of like how long is it going to take until I can be out there like being productive again? Because I think this is bullshit. But she's interesting like that. She also at one point she gets pulled into an interrogation with Nute Gunray, and she gets so bored and so fed up that she just pulls out her lightsaber and she's like, talk. And she puts it up to like his neck, and she's like, "I'll kill you!" Like, and like the master, like I think it was Anduli or Luminara Anduli. He's like, "Hey, tone it down a little bit, young gun." Like,
that's what's called pulling an Anakin.
yeah, no kidding.
Wait, who's her mentor again? It's Anakin Skywalker. Oh, okay. Yeah. All right.
Got it. Yeah, and she's like, I didn't mean it. We got to make this guy think I'm serious. And then actually 5 seconds later, he's like, I'll tell you anything. So it worked. It actually worked. So she's crafty in her own way, but she's flawed, which makes her kind of interesting.
She's crafty. Good word for it.
Yeah. Or just like brazen.
Listen, man, I'll gut you.
Yeah, that's crafty. Second point, she shows you she's able to kind of show you Anakin's personality, good and bad, throughout the show, because she's like along for the ride and she's kind of a soundboard for all of it. So Anakin's best qualities that are shown in the Clone Wars, he actually shows wisdom at times. He shows leadership, humor. He does a lot of humor in the show. He can be really brilliant at times. He's able to come up with these crazy plans that actually work and defeat the enemy. And also extremely loyal. Like the one thing you could count on for Anakin for is that if you like hurt someone he cared about, like he's gonna come after you hard. So when Cad Bane, an infamous bounty hunter at the time, captures Ahsoka, like you see some of the worst anger and that fear of loss that Anakin has like come out. So that is something that the show does really well. Is it kind of shows the different aspects of Anakin's personality.
And tell me this, Chris, and there's sort of, this is speaking as somebody who didn't make it past the first season at least yet. Do you feel like Ahsoka exists at first to become like to pull out things from Anakin or to make things to lay Anakin's qualities bare? Or do you feel like it was the other way around? It was like, let's find a way for the goodness to kind of live on a little bit longer, even though that Anakin's gonna fall to the dark side. Because to me, it feels like, young Ahsoka is a little cringy at first, and you think, all right, this is just showing you who Anakin is. But then they like really dive deep into it, and she becomes even kind of more important to the story than even Anakin was at the time. What's your take on that?
I agree. I mean, so is the question. I mean, it sounds to me like the latter half of that it really resonates for me. I mean, they're both kind of cringy. They're both growing up. I mean, Anakin is like what, 19, 20 when this show is going on. Like we forget that, like he's a general in an army, but he's pretty much, I mean, come on, when you were 19, like what were you doing? So he's kind of along the ride with her. But yeah, she makes a lot of mistakes. She's kind of raw, and a lot of fans didn't like her at first because she came off a little bit whiny and annoying. But she grew up throughout the show, and I think she became a little bit more interesting. And yeah, I think I'm getting there later in this discussion. But yeah, she becomes more of the focal point, I would say, of the Clone Wars show.
I think to a larger point, the real draw for me of the Clone Wars, the thing that keeps bringing me back to like why I want to actually watch it, is my takeaway from my understanding of like people like yourself, Chris, your love for it, is that it really existed as a way to take kind of the impressions of the characters from the original prequel trilogy of like they tell you a lot about who Obi-Wan and Anakin are to each other, and they tell you a lot about who he was before he became Darth Vader and all that stuff. But the Clone Wars series is what really like shows you the fully more developed and like broad version of that character and like the intricacies there. That's like always just kind of said to you. And same with like Ahsoka being there, you actually get to see that level of like who was like the true knight of Anakin before he fell, right? And that like adds so much more of like a retrospective or like a I don't know, like a retcon in a way of the canon to make more sense and fit it in the best ways.
Yeah, it does do exactly that. And then when if you make it to Rebels, which is asking a lot for people that haven't even watched the Clone Wars, but if you do make it there at some point, the animation style and combined with the subject matter makes it the weight of the show. I just like tenfold, because it has this way of making the Republic look like something nostalgic and like royal and like just very like special, because they show these holograms of these old training videos. Like basically it was like Anakin came up with this form that deflected blaster fire better than anyone else. And in Rebels, Ahsoka's just watching it, and she's watching it, this hologram with, Kanan and Ezra. And it's actually, he's wearing like this other very stately uniform that they didn't really wear in the Clone Wars TV show, but they brought because Ralph McQuarrie was a huge influence on Rebels. And she's just like, wow, I mean, he was just fantastic back then. Like he was really something. And it's like, whoa, this is like a totally different perspective. Because like when you're watching the Clone Wars show, there is this little bit like, hey, it's a show. Like, of course, they're always going to win and they're always going to do something crazy. But when you combine that with like Rebels, it kind of makes it feel a lot more weighty, especially when you're looking back at someone that like obviously became this villain.
And I think another reason why I want to get caught up in all of this with Ahsoka in general and just Clone Wars and Rebels is that is where the new content is coming from. Like when you play Jedi Fallen Order, like there is so much Clone Wars in there, because like Night Sisters and all of these like different new characters and things, like new aspects of the lore come from the Clone Wars for the most part, because that's right around that era, and that's at the conclusion of the Clone Wars. But then also the being at Star Wars Celebration too, and the anticipation of Ahsoka being in something else, like her reveal in Rebels, because she's spoilers, she's a surprise to be in Rebels. Like when she appears, it's kind of like a little bit of a spoiler, and I want to be able to kind of like have those revealing moments. Of course I just missed one, where season 7 also, be like invested in something enough to where like these little snippets, like if they talk about Night Sisters, or if they talk about the third brother, sister, whatever, that those things actually mean something to me. And right now they're just like sort of like, oh, these are brand new.
Yeah, she's actually going to be a through line now in 3 different Star Wars TV shows, because she's going to be in season 2 of The Mandalorian.
Yeah. So yeah, all of the TV kind of revolves around her now.
Yeah, it really does. So that was kind of one of my points, is that she's a through line through multiple, Star Wars properties. So these are kind of some of my 2 more important points. Is one of them is that they're kind of tie in with each other. Is that she was actually a thorn in Darth Sidious's plan to make Anakin his apprentice. So an analogy that I'll make to the real world is, if you ever, which, I don't really suggest it, but if you ever read any of the pickup artist handbook or whatever is out there online, they always have this.
Cool.
Oh, so sick.
So cool.
You're about to get some hot tips here, guys. So listen up. You always have to, one rule is that you have to isolate your target from the group.
The dentist system.
Oh yeah, the dentist system.
The dentist system. So, when she wants to really wine and dine Anakin, bring him to the opera, show him a good time, tell him, the tragedy of Darth Plagueis the Wise, he can't do that if Ahsoka's in the picture. So really, he's got to separate her from such a good influence in his life, because I really think you can't. Obi-Wan obviously was a good influence, but he's part of the system. Really, Ahsoka's not. She's not part of the problem. She's not the one saying that you can't be on the council. So he kind of has to he tries throughout the Clone Wars show to push Ahsoka away from Anakin, and it doesn't work. But it finally sort of does towards the end, and this is where I lead to my last point, is that Ahsoka exposes the Jedi Council as corrupt bureaucrats.
Yeah, I mean, I think that even though I haven't really watched much of Ahsoka, the understanding that I have of her and Sidious and their relationship to Anakin is they're both like 2 different anchors for how to basically deal with your emotions. And like the Jedi are the unsustainable path of like, don't have emotions, like don't do it. Yeah. And then Ahsoka's more just like, no, like, it's normal to feel these things, whatever. Like she's more of a human side to it. And, Palpatine's more like, just kill them all. Like he goes down the side of like, indulging in your worst ways and your worst fears by like, power and control. And it's that sort of like spectrum of where Anakin can really, clearly the middle ground of the Jedi is not working for him, right? So,
yeah, and I mean,
do it.
Clearly, like, yeah, those are examples of where they say the Jedi don't deal in absolutes. Palpatine clearly does. He says, "Do it," and he says, "Kill them all." But yeah. I think she was one of the. She's literally the last defense against the dark side, or against the temptation of the dark side. That's Ahsoka. So when there's actually this whole thing that happens, there's a bomb that actually gets planted inside the Jedi Temple at one point. I'm going to try not to go into spoilers too much when I talk about this part, because it's really important. But Ahsoka essentially gets wrapped up into being the person that investigates it. But when she, it starts to interview one of the suspects, she actually gets accused of killing that suspect. So then she becomes the main person. And the Republic has her kind of in custody, and they're accusing her of being the person that bombed the Jedi Temple. Sheev is like militant against her. Even Tarkin is involved in the show at this point. And the Jedi are they're being very diplomatic. They're like, well, we're sure Ahsoka didn't do it. Maybe you can help us bring this in internally. We'll handle it from here, guys. Like, don't worry. And they're like, no. Like, we got this. We'll take care of this. And Yoda and the Jedi aren't exactly like fighting for their person. So this really doesn't rub her the right way. It doesn't. Anakin is trying to make his case, but eventually she kind of escapes. And she's able to prove her innocence and be exonerated. And then the Jedi are like, oh, Ahsoka. Ooh, sorry about that. No hard feelings, though. And this is, you know what? We'll just consider this your final trial. And here's your diploma. You can now become a Jedi Knight. And they're like, look how we took care of that one. And she's like, thanks, but no thanks. And she leaves the order. So I think, like, at that point, if you couldn't figure out that there was something wrong with the Jedi, you really could then.
Wow, it's so convenient. It worked out this way. It was a pop quiz, and you aced it.
Turns out you aced it.
Great job. Blue milk all around. You want to go get the blue milk. It'll go help them.
Yeah.
Yeah. I really appreciate that, though. I mean, I think we talked about in some of our earlier episodes about how the Jedi Order really kind of sucked in a lot of ways. And I think all of us basically came to an understanding that in our own, Star Wars fantasies, how we'd see ourselves in the Star Wars world, I think we'd all end up being gray Jedis, ideally, because the actual Jedi Order, it's dumb. Like, it doesn't work. It's like really archaic, and it's just like not practical. And you see stuff like that where there's this idea of like keeping the peace by only the means of just like trying to keep people calm all the time, which is not a realistic way of dealing with things. So,
in my fantasies, I'm usually a Hutt.
We all have our fantasies. Hey,
there you go.
But on the note of the Jedi sucking a little bit with the Council and the way they handle things, one of the questions I had in my research, and maybe Chris, you can shed some light on this. I was reading about her lightsaber handling techniques and how she would use the reverse grip, and she was really good with that, but then would use the standard grip when her master insisted on it. Like, why? What's wrong with the reverse grip?
I actually didn't know that. That's really interesting. I know that she dual wields. She uses 2 different sized lightsabers, one short, one longer. That's all.
With white as well.
She eventually got to that point. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Very cool.
So yeah, I just think if there's a way it works with the reverse grip, why? It's like trying to take a sidearm pitcher and make him throw overhand, because that's the way it usually goes. When it's like, oh, actually, him throwing sidearm can throw off the batter's vision.
Yeah.
My assumption would be that the classical Jedi teachers would be like, that's not in the books.
Yeah.
You can't do that one.
Ahsoka,
it's in
which
front of
form
you.
are you using right now? I don't think that's one of the forms.
Excuse me.
Since we're on the topic of the Jedi sucking still, I got a take on Ahsoka here, and think about. Bear with me. So Ahsoka is like the thinker or author that is, I guess, a little bit before your time, and you start, getting really into them. You start listening to their lectures or guest appearances on YouTube or something like that, and they inspire you to start reading some subversive literature. So they're the first person that the person that says, "Oh, I'm going to read Marx now for the first time."
Mm-hmm.
And then Luke is your friend who reads Marx and decides that I'm entirely a socialist. That's all I do now is be socialist. And then their opinions of the Jedi Order are sort of like that. Whereas Ahsoka got disillusioned by capitalism Jedi-ness,
mm-hmm.
and kind of blazed her own path that way. And then Luke read Das Kapital once and is like, yeah, the Jedi have to end.
Well, he had his own angst moment on Octo.
Yeah.
He wanted to burn the Jedi texts.
Yeah, right? And then, Ahsoka had her own angst moment, but she had, 40 years.
Stuck to her guns.
For her to kind of calm down and figure well, there's other ways than just the Jedi Order. I don't need to just burn down the Jedi. as opposed to, and that's sort of like it lives on in Rey a little bit, where, I'm the only one left. We don't need to start a school, or I don't know, maybe she will. Whereas Luke's like, they just need to end. You're not a Jedi anymore. They just cause more trouble. It's like, I read Marx once. I now have a Lenin poster in my bedroom.
To me, it is a little bit like if you had, maybe Bernie supporters and then like maybe like Biden supporters. You can say if the Biden supporters are talking trash about the Bernie supporters, people are just going to be like, yeah, duh, or whatever. I don't have to believe you. Yeah. But then if a Bernie supporter is then saying, guys, there's something wrong with the Bernie movement, then people will be like, huh? What? It takes someone from the inside, for people to actually listen. If it's someone like, you can't have Maul and the dark side saying the Jedi are terrible, and everyone's gonna be like, yeah, well, you're bad, so I don't listen.
So then Ahsoka is Bernie in this case.
So Ahsoka's Bernie. Oh yeah, because she's saying forget the system.
Because she was in the Order. Like, Luke was never in the Order. He was kind of by his lonesome, being taught by Yoda and Obi-Wan, of course. But Ahsoka was Bernie. Yeah, and Luke is again your Bernie supporter friend who bought Das Kapital on Amazon, which defeats the purpose. And then Rey is your friend that just wants Medicare for all. It's like, yeah, we're gonna work on this because we just need a better world. And then Luke's like, but no.
What is
Is Maul Biden in this case?
Actually, that is a good analogy.
I think Maul is clearly the Emperor. Falling apart, no fingers.
Oh, you mean Trump is the Emperor?
I guess Trump is the Emperor. I guess. Oh no, Biden is Snoke.
Yeah, you said Maul is the Emperor.
No, sorry. Trump is the Emperor. Skin falling off his hands. He has to be like wheeled around in a crane. And then Snoke is
too much bleach. Biden. He has all the bleach tubes in him.
Well, now that we've brought up,
we've alienated all of our political aligned listeners.
We've just crapped on both sides.
Nobody's safe.
Equally though.
Nobody's safe.
And I'm going to take it a step farther, because now that we brought up Biden, Bernie, and Trump, and all of their far too advanced ages for being politicians, that brings us to our Wikipedia entry of the week, which is the Wikipedia entry for death.
Nice.
This may be the best one we've had yet, guys. I don't know how I never stumbled upon the death page before my research for this episode.
Looked up death on Google.
Not on Google, on Wikipedia.
Hey guys, you ever Googled your own death?
When do I die?
Hold on. So it starts with, and I thought this was good enough. Okay, it starts with, death is the cessation of life functions in a biological organism, permanently rendering it unresponsive to any external factors. And that made me laugh, and I was like, all right, that's our Wikipedia entry of the week. But
it's a fancy way of saying death is the absence of life.
Yes. But then what I did
is I'm life impaired, guys.
I read further. And Nick, I would guess you might be closest to having kids compared to the rest of us. And at some point, when you have kids, you're going to have to explain to your kids how death works and what death is. So we'll do
a podcast, How Death Works.
I would direct them to this page where it says, in most cases, death was caused by the major body parts within an organism simply breaking down from age and or constant use. However, it could also be caused by irreparable damage to major organs, such as them being ruptured, sliced, blasted, or similarly damaged. Death could also be caused by the lack of bodily fluids such as blood, as they are required to ferry certain nutrients required for life to continue.
Is it possible to learn this power?
I love whoever was writing this thing was like, let's explain everything about death, and this goes on for paragraphs and paragraphs.
Are there any subsections about unnatural methods to bring people back from death?
To cheat death is a power only one has achieved.
Or to die from a broken heart?
Well, it then goes into suicide.
That sounds like a broken heart death.
And it says Padme Amidala was the one such individual.
She was so sad her heart literally exploded after giving birth to 2 children. Yeah.
And it ends with, finally, death could be brought by the complete annihilation of the body by forces such as experienced by being inside an exploding spaceship or a planet hit by a super laser blast.
Guys, I am going to be putting that into my will that when I die in my obituary, it's going to say his body was completely annihilated by death.
Every
For
inch of
more
his
on
body.
this, please subscribe to the Loose Cannon podcast.
We also have a pretty
Like and
interesting
subscribe.
question
That's
in
gonna
chat.
be, somebody's headstone already says like and subscribe.
Smash that like button.
Smash that like button, fam.
Yeah.
All right, so Annalie puts up a good question that I want to go focus on here. Is Ahsoka dead in the sequel trilogy? Like, what's the lifespan of her race?
I do not know.
If I were to guess, I'm going to say they're totally going to use her as a vehicle into the between prequel and original trilogy time, and then maybe even some like that Obi-Wan series that is supposedly going to be happening with Ewan McGregor on Disney Plus. I could see her showing up in that. Like, I feel like she's going to be a through line to connect.
Rosario
the
Dawson's going to be
prequel.
busy. Star
Yeah.
Wars busy.
Yeah, she's already busy. She's in like Daredevil and Marvel and all
Yeah,
that
I think
stuff.
she's
And
cool
then,
with that.
yeah. So I don't know. I think they're just going to use her as like a thread between the prequel times and the original trilogy times.
Average lifespan's 94 years for the Torguda.
Oh.
Torgata. However you
So
Okay.
in that case,
So
it's
she was
probably a one
born-
shot.
I'm so glad that Wikipedia still used BBY because apparently Star Wars is going to change all of the date lettering to the Battle of Starkiller Base, and that's going to be so hard. But Wikipedia is still in BBY, so she was born in 36 BBY. The Mandalorian takes place in what, 6 BBY or 6 ABY?
I'm not good with timelines.
I'm pretty sure it's 6 ABY, so 42. So Rosario Dawson has to play a 42-year-old. How old is she?
Probably like 42.
46, I'm going to guess.
She's probably around that age.
I bet
Yeah,
she's
I
46.
would
I'm
imagine.
going to look it up. Don't worry. That's all I'm good for.
You said it, not me, brother.
She's 40. I'm sorry.
Okay, so
I assumed
perfect.
she was older.
All right. I was going to say, is that the right age? But yeah.
I mean, they're going to be putting makeup on her regardless, so they can up age her as a Torguda or whatever she is, a tortilla.
A
Yeah,
tortilla.
tortilla.
Yeah.
Huh.
I'm excited though to see her in The Mandalorian. It'll be nice to see
Live action.
yeah, and they're gonna probably bring up some Vader lore into that season if she's there.
Yeah.
Because she's so tied to Anakin and Vader.
Mhm.
I'm a little disappointed that Ashley Eckstein isn't playing her. She's the one who does the voice on the Clone Wars. And
She's rather beloved in the community. Like,
Yeah.
she was one of the most cheered on people at Star Wars Celebration, and she designed some of the Ahsoka T-shirts that you could buy there. Very beloved part, and obviously, she's a voice, so.
Well, but not just a voice. People who aren't familiar with the show might remember her from her starring performance in The Brady Bunch in the White House, or the community theater play of The Miracle Worker, where she played Helen Keller when she was 12.
Oh, yes.
Another actor that's pretty popular in this space is Sam Witwer, who he first was the voice of. It was kind of almost like the first path at Ahsoka was the Starkiller character, where he was Vader's apprentice after Anakin's apprentice, and then that got nuked from canon, and then they had him come in. He's the voice of the Emperor and Darth Maul now, so he's big old Star Wars geek himself.
So yeah, and I'm wondering, are they ever going to cameo the famous voices? What's the guy who does Obi-Wan? He has three first names.
Oh yeah.
And then Sam Witwer is man, they for sure Sam Witwer is another beloved person in Star Wars. They totally need to cameo him, but technically he can be in anything that Maul is in because he was the voice of Maul in Rogue One.
Yeah.
James Arnold Taylor is
James
the
Arnold
voice
Taylor.
actor you were
mean
Three
looking
first
for.
names.
Or wait.
What did I say? Rogue One?
Yeah.
Yeah, Solo.
Yeah.
They just really don't want Ray Park speaking for himself, huh?
I'll do a backflip. Oh, there you go.
I'm doing another one.
I'll do 3 in a row. I. He's not stopping. Calm down, Ray. You want me to do another one? Ray, stop. We're gonna dub over your voice.
You didn't even hesitate.
Oh, thanks. Give me a hug. It's a real nice guy.
Dave.
Dave Filoni. Ray's a real nice guy.
Yeah.
Well, when Sam Witwer too, though, he's one of those actors who's been in a lot of bit parts on just like different shows. He was in a PlayStation game. It was like a zombie game that came out last year. He showed up in a lot of those like CW superhero shows and different parts. So he definitely has like he has the acting ability too. But I don't know. I'm sure they snuck the voice of Anakin in the Clone Wars show into the Mandalorian episode of the spaceship jail. He's the guy that they hold at gunpoint that hails the backup. Yeah.
Wow.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
So they haven't done that for James Arnold Taylor yet, though.
Yeah, but it's probably
Or
only a
Ashley
matter of
Eckstein.
time because I mean Filoni having his hands all over the Mandalorian stuff with Jon Favreau. So
Yeah.
We'll see.
So, on the note of Sam Witwer, his first acting role was a show that many actors have their first acting role on, and this is going to be a little trivia for you guys. There are like 3 options it could be that actors of his age got their start on.
Can I put a guess in?
Yeah. I'll just guess. I won't even give you guys options.
This is just a real shot in the dark. Is it Nickelodeon's Are You Afraid of the Dark?
No. It's too like as common and cliche as it could be. So your 3 options. Let's see if any of you can get it right. Your options are NCIS, Cold Case, or ER.
ER?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well
If
done.
you're gonna
I feel
say
like
Law and
every
Order, I
actor
was gonna
either
say
started
absolutely.
on ER, Law and Order, NCIS.
My second guess was going to be like Walker, Texas Ranger or
Yeah.
something.
Dr.
It's
Quinn,
like
Medicine Woman.
a small child number 4. Yeah.
Yeah. No. 2001.
Well, Chris, is this the end of all the notes that you have for
Yeah.
Ahsoka?
Yeah,
All of
that
your
was
formal notes?
Pretty much. I mean, there were some things I browsed through, but yeah, I think that gets my overall thoughts through for sure.
Well, Chris, I got to say, I dig it. I dig the research you've done, and you've sold me on Ahsoka. I don't know if I'm going to watch the Clone Wars still, but I'm that much more excited for the Mandalorian season 2. But you know what I might do actually is I might look at a bunch of select YouTube clips, different areas, because I've watched the fight between Darth Maul and Obi-Wan from Rebels quite a few times, and that's some good stuff. So
Do you see that viewing guide I posted in our chat?
I will be revisiting it after this call.
Yeah. So Chris sent this to me, and this really gives you recommendations of what to watch, and it really like cuts each season into like a third for you to like get caught up on.
Well,
I think I might do that.
Have you guys listened to the binge mode thing on the Ringer at all of the Star Wars Clone Wars stuff?
No,
No.
they have that.
They do some pretty good rundowns of different things in Star Wars.
Not
Clone
hosted by
Wars.
Bill Simmons.
Not hosted by Bill Simmons, unfortunately, but they did a
Never
good.
made it through the Clone Wars.
And guess what? There's a black lightsaber coming up next. Rewatchables.
That's pretty crazy. It reminds me about Larry Bird.
Gus
Going-
Fring comes out of the ship. Black lightsaber up next. Rewatchables.
Bill
You, like,
Simmons.
turned
Bill
Simmons
Simmons
into,
could not keep his mouth shut about The Last Dance. He could not keep his mouth shut. He said, "Oh, I'll take the '80s Celtics over the '90s Bulls," which is an insane opinion.
Well, did you also see his dumbass take to bring this full circle that Dennis Rodman isn't an interesting athlete? He's like, why have we been pretending Dennis Rodman's been interesting for the last 20 years? It's
he's
Well,
like,
hey, if you're Boston indoctrinated into thinking Larry Bird is cool, then yeah, I guess you would imagine that Rodman's not.
He doesn't want to
interesting.
admit that Chicago was a mecca of basketball for a decade.
Yeah,
but like,
would take it.
regardless of any of that, Dennis Rodman, he's like the most interesting athlete in the history of the NBA.
Yeah.
Well, I can appreciate his hot takes because at least all the ones that I listen to him on, like rewatchables, whatever, he'll say his dumb hot takes, and then he immediately gets pounced on by his 3 co-hosts.
Oh
Just
yeah,
like,
Sean
what
Fennessy doesn't take any of his bullshit.
Yeah. So I would have a problem with it if he didn't get challenged, but he almost always gets challenged whenever he says his crazy stuff. But no, binge mode. They did like a rundown on a lot of the like the Mandalorian politics, like the society of the Mandalorians and what you see in the Clone Wars with what John Favreau's character is and the Clone Wars, but his whole place in there and how Darth Maul takes him on and all that fun stuff. So that's another option if you're wanting to run down on Clone Wars stuff.
Yeah, Sean Fennessy takes Bill Simmons to task a lot, and I'm here for it. He also looks like he just recorded an interview with Ad Rock and Mike D from Beastie Boys, which I'm definitely gonna have to check out.
Pleasant.
But yeah, before we devolve into fully making this talking about the Ringer podcast,
wait, one last thing about the Ringer though. There's a header on the Ringer that's just Michael Jordan. There's NFL, NBA, COVID-19, Michael Jordan.
COVID.
Take that, Simmons.
Yes. So yes.
There
Chris,
we go.
I will say you have successfully sold me on this character being one of interest and one that I would like to continue to learn more about by watching the Clone Wars. So you didn't mess this one up for once.
We still have time.
That's all the questions and things I had on this. Anyone else?
So.
Oh, well, as always, thanks for listening. Write in if you got any ideas you want us to tackle for episodes. We're going to be doing more of What If Blank Made a Star War. So we have some good, interesting directors lined up there. More of our white male directors. And we'll continue to go with that. But any other questions you have for these more traditional episodes, anything you want to know in this time of consuming content, we are here to help.
Any random characters too, particularly from these Clone War days, or even if you want to take, expanded universe stuff and be like, hey, talk about this random character from that Scholastic book from 1997. We would be more than happy to go down those rabbit holes. Yeah.
And if Ashley Eckstein wants to come on and do an interview, we're happy to have her, and we will purely talk about no, we won't talk about the Brady Bunch goes to the White House. We'll talk about, I don't know, her appearance on That's So Raven.